we're going to introduce Corey Gilbert. He's going to come up. He's going to tell you a little bit about himself, and he has a great presentation for us today and gifts on the table. So let's welcome Corey Gilbert.
So great to be here. So good to be here. My name is Corey Gilbert. I'm a professor at Corbin. I've been teaching there this is my 9th year there. My 16th year teaching in higher education at all levels. Also private practice. This is my 22nd year, if you can believe that, as a counselor, just training. So love it, love it, love it. That's a picture of my family. That was our picture for the directory here at the church 3 years ago. That's the best we could do, pretty much. Oh, and I miss the little age. I know you guys are like, I wonder if strangle their necks, but I miss that so much. Just seeing some of your little ones running around just makes my heart. Because my wife has said no more, so I have to go away. Now ours are a little older. And that's even about a year old. So Blaze is now taller than I am, and it's crazy how they grow up. On the tables, this is actually the first edition of my book. It's the same book, but the book with the other picture right there, I can't say that. This is a gift for you. So if you don't have one, or if you can grab one, this is for you. Why I want, and what we're going to talk about today, you to be on the front lines of leading your children. And what I'm seeing as a strength and as actually really just in counseling, is how many of us come to the conversation too late. And so that's kind of what we're going to be kind of looking at today. If you're interested, I also wrote another one back there called Going Beyond the Talk, and it's actually for the teen, preteen and teen, to hand to them. This is the one that's got a workbook at the back of it. It's for them to study. And one of my favorite reviews was an 18-year-old who read it and said, "Thank you for not telling me what to believe, but helping me walk through Scripture and understand how I should see this and how I should think, but I have to choose." And that's a hard one. I was actually just like celebrating when I heard that, because it was like, and that's a hard line to follow, because what I want to tell everyone what to believe, but it's go to the Bible, go to the Bible, go to the Bible. That's my main, on gender and sexuality. That's my main area that I teach in, talk in, but also in the area of trauma. And so the journey that I want to go on today is going to look at you and your story for a minute, kind of like from a 50,000 foot view, as you were a kid. And then we're going to kind of twist it around and look at your own children. But I want you to think of a kitchen, your kitchen. Actually, your kitchen growing up. This may not look like at all like your kitchen. Actually, this may be more like it. But think of a kitchen, and think of that space in your house that was actually maybe safe. Maybe there's a lot of joy there, a lot of great memories. What I don't want you to do is, when I say the word trauma, most of us think of really bad things. It's not what I'm talking about. I mean, it's probably fair to say that many of us, actually probably most, have some pretty severe stuff that's happened to us. That's not really what I want to focus on today. I want to actually focus on those little things where that time that my mom or dad missed me, and I really needed them right then. That time that my friends were about to get in the car and drive away, and they left me and I wasn't seen. And if we're not careful, it's actually the reality of us as a mom right now with the lack of sleep. So good job getting here. It feels like it's forever, which it does feel like it's forever. I remember the first time we left our kids alone. See ya. Also, no babysitter. We have cameras in the house, but no babysitter. And I remember actually last summer was the first time we went overnight away. It was like, oh, so great. And they survived. They were alive. Which my standard for a babysitter was, are they breathing afterwards? And we're good. Because we have our lifeline when we were where you were at, were college students. And we were in Georgia at the time, and the amount of students that would sign up with Kelly to just come give her a break was incredible. It was actually part of the requirements as a student to serve someone somehow. And we look back and realize, I don't think we would have survived that stage. We would have, but we would have caused more trauma for our kids, honestly. It was a huge, especially for my wife, because she is an extreme introvert. extreme introvert. Like she wouldn't come to this for anything. And it's interesting to watch personalities and who God even pairs you up with. But when you think of your stories, you go into these places, and you can probably go there right now and think of these key moments that you probably minimized and or tried to ignore that really shaped you. Like if I were to actually put up either other pictures of different locations in your house, I bet you would have a memory for almost every one. Whether it's if you had a fireplace or had some kind of central place, what are some memories there? But do we always go to the good ones? And often not. Actually, often we're fighting the bad ones. But we don't see them as bad because we kind of like, why is it haunting me, or why is it intruding onto my life right now? But it does. It really does. And so I want to, and this is, to me, this is a great picture of what's happening in our minds. And actually, I would say one of the main steps into this was when the iPhone was created, when smartphones entered this picture. Ironically, that's not what even Steve Jobs was trying to do. He was just, hey, I'm going to pair these different things together. But what's taken over that device is social media. And the scary thing and crazy thing is it affects us just like it affects our kids. And the impact of just that alone, we could talk for hours on just that. And on the research and on what it actually, how much boundaries we need, how desperate we need boundaries for ourselves, but also our kids. Because this is, for some of us, our day-to-day mind is full and lost and overwhelmed. And I don't know how to get through this. So I want to give you 3 pictures of some experiences you probably had growing up. So again, still thinking about you. The first one is this term orphan. And I'm not talking about if you are actually an orphan. Even more so, do you understand this experience? So an orphan mentality becomes activated when our needs are not taken care of. And profoundly affecting actually everything of who we are. What is it like to feel like an orphan? Actually, am I seen? Does someone see me? Think of these different moments in your story where someone, a best friend, a group of friends, your parents, someone that you really cared about, didn't see you. And the word that I want you to kind of associate with that is this one. We feel betrayed. We feel betrayed by God. We feel betrayed by our family. We feel betrayed by that person. And this is not an experience that we're not familiar with. It's kind of the point of this. The betrayal involves any neglect or failure to care and provide for the needs of another human being. It doesn't matter what I think you need. What matters is what you actually perceived you needed in that moment. It's really, really important. So kind of hang on to that one, this idea of an orphan, that I'm not being seen or cared for. Second one, and the places we tend to go, is control, shame, hypervigilance, and grief. And those don't seem like the best ways to manage this. But it's amazing how we go there. And how we start trying to control our world, our spouses, our kids, everything. And this really filters into how we are as a parent. Or we live in shame. We cover up then. We hide. Or we're always on edge. Or we live in sorrow and grief. Second one is stranger. Now, picture this one. Those in power often banish the alien and stranger and then blame them for not fitting in and doing what good people do to restore their rights. The stranger, do I fit in? Do I belong? You've probably felt that. Again, thinking back at your childhood, there were moments you can go right back to in your mind and go, oh my gosh, yes. And I feel so overwhelmed in that moment. When I think about it, it kind of even floods in and takes over. What's the key word here? Powerlessness. There's nothing I could do to fix the system, to be seen, to be heard, to fit in, to belong. He sees what could be, but has been rendered impotent to bring redemption. I feel lost. And how do we handle this? Dissociation, addiction, defiance, cynicism, envy. We manage this by getting wrapped up in being jealous about what someone else has, about living just cynical about everything, which this past year and a half hasn't made that any easier. Fighting the system, fighting other people's perspectives, and addiction. Addiction was a scary one, because addiction isn't just drugs or alcohol. For many of us, the addiction is our phone. Addiction is anything to numb me, to escape. It's Netflix. It's something to get away. And that's how we function, if not careful. And dissociation, you know, the whole driving and you turn 16 turns and you didn't remember you're like, how did I get here and stay alive? It's incredible what our brain can do and still do. How we can check out. For some of us, this is a beautiful relief to dissociate, to separate myself. But is it really working? We find that it doesn't. Because we do this with our spouse, and even those crazy little rugrats that need you so much. We just check out. Right? Because there's remnants of who we were as a kid that still remain today. And then this third one is interesting. Widow. What is seldom acknowledged by others is that a rift has occurred in the universe that will never be repaired. A loss that I will never ever get back. Some of us actually have really key relationships when we were younger. That person moved away or passed away, or a rift in that relationship that you can go back to and go, that hurt me in such a deep level, I never was the same. We know the experience of being that picture of a widow. Or even this word, ambivalence. What's funny is when I first saw this word years and years ago, my brain, my definition of this was, I don't care. It's not. It's the idea of being torn between two things. I know this, but also want to believe this, and I feel like I'm being torn. Pleasure's good, but I hate you. I get torn. I know I want to protect you, my children, but I know I can't. I can't 100% protect you. And I feel torn. This is a scary truth. It's for so many. Grief that imprisons. We live in sorrow and grief. We live in loneliness, isolation, vulnerability, poverty even. And thinking even for the actual widow who's fit. Refusal to mourn, idolatry. What am I trying to do? I'm trying to control my world. And I'm trying the best I can. Really, really, really am. But it's like I'm doing every single thing I can do that actually keeps me trapped. Keeps me overwhelmed. And where am I coming from? I'm coming from my story, your story. There are key things that shape you. But again, I would say, it's not some of the things you think about. It's not the big traumas, if you will, capital T traumas. Those do. But what I'm seeing as I talk to people is often it's those little things that severely alter my personality, my way to see the world, and then how I then lead my children. Why? Because, and here's the switch that I want to for you to think about. Your children are experiencing all three of these. We're so separate from when we were that age. It's funny how you got mad when something went wrong, but it's not okay for them to get mad when something goes wrong. Things like that. And we all have our thing. We all have our space that maybe even our pet thing that we kind of get stuck on. And so when our kid does this, why do I tend to overreact at times? Well, because of my story. And when I start recognizing it, I need to be able to laugh a little and realize, doofus, I'm the one that's stuck here. I love you. And what do we need to be for our kids right now is actually that safe container to hold grief, and hold sorrow, and hold questions, and hold confusion. I work with a lot of families that are dealing with children that are transitioning, so genders, which by the way is not okay, and the medical field agrees that are allowed to speak, but most of them get fired. But it's happening anyway, so that is almost irrelevant. How do we walk alongside our children as they hurt? what we want is for them not to hurt, right? We don't want them to. And so here's where I get stuck. I remember having my table set up at a homeschool conference. We homeschool. And my mom's walking right by me, not even looking at it. And I'm just standing there like, this is for you. Not when they're 13. It's too late. This is for you. And how do we have these conversations at 1, at 2, 3, 4, 5 that prepares them for anything and everything? Mostly, and the scary thing, a lot of the ones we didn't have. Had great parents. We never had these conversations. How do we prepare our children? Why? Because either I do or someone else does. Period. 2 years ago, 2 summers ago, California decided to say that all 15 genders need to be taught in the local kindergarten. And I kind of laughed because there's 73 on Facebook, and Facebook is in California, and have they not talked? Anyway, I don't know where they got 15 from. But parents started freaking out, and I was like, no. If you're also in California, good luck not being a dual income family. So, what do? We can freak out all we want, we can pull our kids, or we can actually be the first ones to teach them. And then this is what I hear from parents. Oh, but you're too young. I'm like, they're too young for you to teach them, but they're not too young for them to teach something you totally disagree with. Yeah, good luck with that. No, we are the disciplers of our children. But actually, it's kind of like even in church. We kind of want them to have a faith based off an hour and a half a week in church. Good luck with that. It's not going to happen. We are the ones discipling, leading, wrestling with. I work with a lot of teenagers. Most of the teenagers, I make sure our parents in the room with me, not because I need them there. I don't like teenagers, but I'm actually speaking to the mom or dad more than anything. Why? They're on the front lines of the day-to-day drama, struggle. They're the ones I'm talking to. I'd rather just talk to the parents, actually, most of the time, because it's like, you're the one there at 2 a.m. when someone, Joey runs away. I'm not. How do I help you in those times of, and a few years ago, one of our friends, one of my son's friends went away, and he ran away. Alex ran away. It was one of those moments of just, I'm out driving the streets looking for him. It's happened twice, actually, in the last few years. The second one was over a girl. But, and I found him, and we sat and talked. And all you want to do, in one sense, is raining. At the same time, how do you be a safe container, holder? And it's interesting because as our kids get older, and actually as your kids hit teen years, you're probably not going to be that person. If you are, count yourself extremely, extremely, extremely blessed. One of the reasons we do Boy Scouts is actually not about Boy Scouts. The kids care less about Boy Scouts. It's our community group, almost. It's a bunch of dads. Moms are there too, but dads go on the campouts, and the dads mentor these sons. And my son is exposed to other dads, and is more likely to go to them. And I get to love on these other boys. But even cooler is some of the single moms that we say, you're welcome to drop your kid off, and you're not welcome on campouts. And they're like, thank you. And we get to love on those boys as dads. And it's all Christian families. And we meet here at Salem First Baptist in the garages. And it's been incredible. This is my 10th year. I never did Scouts. What that was, my dad did. And he skipped me. Because we lived overseas. There wasn't any of that. He's now 77 and, leading Scouts in Texas and loves all that. And it's like, yeah, I see how you are. Just let me out. And he's good at teaching that stuff, all the outdoor stuff and all that. And there's things you're good at doing. There's some areas that we don't want to touch with a 10-foot pole. The last 17 years I've taught human sexuality. So in Georgia and then here in Oregon to undergraduates. Love that class. It's one of my favorite classes. These last 2 weeks have been the most stressful 2 weeks ever. Why we're walking through queer theory, gender, homosexuality, same-sex attraction. What does the Bible say? Yes, what does the research say? We're looking at that like crazy. But I've got this year 2 hostile young ladies in my class who hate every word I'm saying, and they're just staring me down wanting to kill me. And it's been interesting. Last year was rough too, with all the masks and was a couple that were still like that too. It's been getting worse and worse every year. Why? I know what I believe, leave me alone. You're not a loving person, they think for me. It's like, my whole heart is about redemption, but not in whatever you think or feel. Towards Christ, towards submission to Christ, towards brokenness, towards surrender, towards giving up. All the opposite of what the world's telling them. And they have bought it hook, line, and sinker. From that research, or from that class, I've been researching and doing a survey of that class all these years. The number one thing that they say is, I learned about sexuality from porn and the internet and friends. Like, overwhelmingly. These are Christian kids. And then this is the coolest part. One of my students was taking the data and pulling stuff out and asking questions, and she found that, but most of them, the extreme majority said, I wish my parents were the safe place I could have gone to. Now, question. Most of them, not all, but most of them, let's say they grew up in a good Christian home. Were their parents probably safe enough to go to? Were their parents probably actually saying, I'm here, ask me any question anytime you want? A lot of them, I talked to them. Yeah. What kid's going to do that? We punted as a parent and said, come talk when you want. And they're like, over my dead body. We must go there. I ask my sons about masturbation practices every 2 or 3 weeks. Do you think I get an answer? No. As in, it's not. And in my book, I talk about micro conversations. I say it all. It's not. It's like a little mini check-in and lecture of you steward what you do with your mind. And what I'm doing is I'm moving out of the unconscious, the habits, into the conscious, where now my prefrontal cortex can engage, even if it's still developing for them. And I choose. And I choose what I focus on, and I choose who I am. I choose my morals, I choose my values. And if I'm taking someone for that practice, am I getting closer or further away? Further away. And I walk through that every time. We talk about pornography at almost every meal at our house. It's a normal conversation to talk about pornography. It is. Why? It's out there and it's available. You don't have filters or anything at home. It's there. And then what happened? A few years into early adolescence, they've looked at something and we talk about it. We find out, or they tell us. One of our boys confessed quickly. Others, we walked in the room and pull up Apple TV and the dodo bird left it on. Girls something. Anyway, it was like, which one did this? And so then Miley saw that, so we had that conversation. And as part of just having all of these. So I want to give you right now kind of a place to start. And this is basically kind of walking through what you have in front of you. The book walks through this and walks through some key areas. The workbook walks through those same things. We're looking at Scripture and looking at what does the Bible say and how do I, as a parent, lead and do this age appropriate. So here's the overview. Age birth to 5. It is rarely too early, and this is that stage of exploration and curiosity. 6 to 10 is the micro conversations. Fact-finding, gathering clues, probably the most important stage of life ever. 11 to 17, we're dealing with social media, technology, stewardship, and boundaries. And what I want us to kind of look at is, for most of us, our hearts and our minds and looking at these little ones, we're like, we'll deal with that when we have to deal with that. I had this one dad, he's like, yeah, my son's really mature, we'll get to that. And then one day, he came to me, he's like, I need your book now. My son's 18 and heading to college, and oh my gosh, what have I done? It's like, yes, because you thought they're too young or too immature, now they're not prepared. I've gone to many homeschool families actually where it's like they've taught nothing, they're not going to give anything, but yet now one of the boys has molested one of the daughters. Not out of wanting to harm anyone, out of just sheer curiosity and a lack of teaching, a lack of understanding of boundaries, conversations that we need to have. So what does this look like? There's my little girl. I had to have 2 boys first to get her, so God had a sense of humor. 0 to 5 is the most crucial age of growing up. By 5 years old, this is where we found out a lot of the problems and roots of this. Most dads, when do they engage with their child? The average dad. When they can do what?
Play sports.
They can throw a ball. It's too late. And what's happened from birth to 5, it's been just the mom and it seems okay. There's something about the imprint of that dad that actually birth to 5, and I've talked to so many people in ministry where the dad's really busy and they engage kind of as ball season basically starts for the kid, and there's a void there, there's something missing there. By age 7, my full personality is basically set in stone in my body and in my being as a kid. 7. What, so the dad has a year or 2? No. Birth to 7. Birth to 5, and think of these 2 words. The kid is growing up in a world where they're absorbing the energy. It's actually not even birth to 5, it's actually conception to 5. They're growing up absorbing the energy of the home. How stressful is it? How overwhelming is it? Am I safe? Am I cared for? But they don't really have the vocabulary to put to it. 6 and up, they're actually absorbing the culture. The rules, what do I stand on, what's allowed, what's not allowed, how can I smart off to mom, what happens if I do, which I would just take my kid to the ground whenever they did that. Because some of them are a little stubborn. But here, this is the time to talk about basic anatomy. Just 101. We don't start when they're older, we start when they're little. Talking about, Miley at one point just stood up in the bathtub and was like, when am I going to get a penis? Great time to have a 1-minute conversation. She's going to love that story when she's older.
And thank you for it.
Yeah. And it was one of those very innocent questions that it's easy to gloss over, it's easy to get embarrassed. No, you're not. One of my friends, actually, they have 2 adopted African American children, and then they have 2 bio kids that are white. And at one point, one of the boys actually asked, so when am I going to turn black? There's such beauty in the innocence, and then we mess them up. We. All of us. Why? Because I still am coming to my kids, and I live in this world of counseling and all this stuff, and I'm still going to do harm to my children. We don't think of it that way, but we do. We miss things, and they feel like an orphan, they feel like a stranger, they feel like a widow, they feel unseen. It's not our intent, but we can be wrapped up in our own drama, our own health issues, our own marriage issues. There's so many pieces and layers to this that affect how we love our kids. Being able to find these moments to have those small little conversations of just basic anatomy, and then the correct body part vocabulary. Call a penis a penis. It's not the wee-wee. It's not all these other stupid words. But we do it usually out of our own uncomfortableness, or actually just what was done for us. And here's why this is critical. This is critical, especially for a young lady, a little girl, when there's harm. The need to have the right words. At one point, my daughter was having some pain, and she said, my bottom hurts. I was like, why are you doing? Where did you get that? And then finally I found out Kelly was like, I didn't know what to call it. I was like, no. And then again, when does this matter the most? When there is harm, something has happened. And being able to have the right vocabulary, we want to get that in their being as young as possible, so that when there's something wrong, they can say, something's wrong with my vulva, or in my vagina, or these words that most of us are like, don't say that. We need to. And what's so funny is I say those words and I laugh when I say it inside, because it's like I grew up in a home where the worst word I heard my dad say was crap, and I'd go cry to my mom. Daddy cussed. And then in college, I had a song, I was a music major, I had a song to sing in front of my professors, and they picked that song my junior year, and it had the word breast in it. I was like, I cannot say that word in front of my professors. And I'm panicking, and it's like verse 3 or something, and so I'm singing along, and he cuts it off right before that. It's like, and now I do this for a living, so crazy. And we can come a long ways. We need to be comfortable with some of these things. But the problem is for some of us, we're not okay with ourselves. We're not okay with our own bodies. We've got some work to do when it comes to how we view ourselves. I've never met a woman, and I do a lot of counseling, probably 90% female clients. I've never met a woman that doesn't have stuff they have issues with themselves, which breaks my heart. I promise, if you really talk through this, it breaks your husband's heart too. And then you're passing on some of this to your kids. This is the stage that really matters. No such thing as the talk. So many of us are actually waiting until they're a teenager and we'll start talking about stuff like this. It's too late. It's going to be them teaching you a lot, probably, if they're even talking at all. In this stage, it gets busy. And again, I know it sounds weird to think about this, but by 10, before 10, 11-ish, we're actually going into a foundation of them understanding what a boyfriend, girlfriend is. And then they can do that, they can have one of those when they're a senior in college. We literally say that in our house. It's not played out that way with our lovely oldest son. We've had to rein him in like crazy. But it's like, no, there is none of that. Why? One reason, because the pressure. For so many, I've got to have someone to be okay because everyone else has someone, or there's something wrong with me if I don't, versus this isn't the season for that. Actually, the earlier that you engage in that kind of boyfriend-girlfriend identity, the earlier you're going to be a grandparent. If we don't abort that child as well. It's like, how do we delay some of those experiences? It's not going to be us delaying them for them, preventing on things. It's actually developing an ethos, a belief system in their head and their heart of the boundaries they want to have, they want to have. Think about that again. They, even at 8, 9, and 10. Why? If you're fighting them at 15 about whether you can and can't date, we haven't developed that ethos. And we're in that. I have a 15-year-old, and it's been a journey. And his gravitation towards trying to rescue people. And it's like, oh, you're like your dad. That's scary. But we need to plant these seeds years earlier so that when it comes, it's kind of an old conversation. Now, I love the passport to purity. I've done that with all my kids. Blaze, it was a failure. We'll have to do it again. Because he's like, penis, everything's funny to him, so I'm going to give it up and I'll have to try it again. But so it is an experiment, but it's an amazing program, Passport to Purity, where you go on a weekend, 3 days, 2 nights, and you just talk through the stuff, listen to the audios from Dennis Rainey and his wife, Barbara. It's really good. And at the end of it, they sign a contract with you that they will not begin dating until you say they're ready. Which my oldest didn't want to sign at age 9. That's why we started early with him. They would test us. This is the stage where you get into more descriptive anatomy. You're talking about this stuff. There's a lot of really good books that are just like little kids' books that we just leave in the shelf with all the other kids' books about boys and girls and bodies and sex, basically. So I remember the first time Alex even asked, actually each kid asked about, so what is sex? And we tell them, and it's like 5 seconds later they're off running. But I remember the day, actually the more recent one, when we're sitting at the dinner table and Miley all of a sudden goes, penis, vagina, and we all bust out laughing. You want that as young of an age as possible, ironically. Because it demystifies it. It takes a lot of the mystery out of this and puts it where it needs to be, off to the side so I can play. Enjoy your Legos, enjoy your stage, and not get obsessed over these things that every TV show and every movie seems to be pushing. The M word. You've got to talk to them ahead of time about masturbation. You've got to go there. If your husband won't, you do. Someone has to. Someone needs to. Actually, even if neither of you won't, someone needs to. I've had those conversations with other people's kids over and over and over. Single parents, single moms, single dads, where it's like, I don't know how to talk about this, and so it's not easy. But you're also giving them a gift of moving stuff out of their unconscious daily practices, not thinking about it, just doing, into take every thought captive. My conscious. Most of our day-to-day world is in our unconscious. And you drive yourself crazy in your own unconscious. And how do I take every thought captive? And then here's that third level of that. There's the unconscious, the conscious, but then there's confession. When I share with someone, when I talk with someone, the fellowship. Isn't it great to be here now and not doing this on Zoom? To eat and to actually serve yourself. Those kind of things. Like little things, it's like, and have someone bring real homemade stuff, not store. Like, it's so incredible. We've lost that, which hopefully is a reminder that we need this. We are so made for fellowship. Boundaries are not taught when they're in high school. They're taught at 1 and 2 and 3. And on every level. I guess you could give your kid a fork and bend it and say, here, stick it in the socket. You'll figure out whether this is a good idea or not. You could do that. Probably not a good idea. But at some point, they need to understand some of these boundaries that are out there. How do we do that? Constant conversations. Using TV shows and movies. We were watching The Voice one time, and this boy and girl, brother and sister, got up to sing. Except it wasn't a brother and sister, it was twin sisters. One had transitioned to be a boy, and they're talking about him, how amazing this is in this story. And my son Blaze is like, do what? Whoa! Pause. Talk. Always, constantly. Our family loves movies and TV shows and stuff, and so we're constantly having these conversations to plant seeds. But here's where it fails. We were skiing a number of years ago, and both of my boys actually got mad because it was the last day of the ski season, April. It's okay. It's the last day of the ski season, and there were girls actually skiing with sports bras on. They just got mad. How dare they wear that in public? That's just so wrong. I'm like, oh gosh. You don't have to say what they wear, punk. And so there's this lot of conversations about, okay, you need to calm it down. This is not. But then it gets worse. A girl comes flying by us topless. Big girl. Big girl. Luckily, Blaze had gone a different direction, so he lost the chance. I chased after Alex, got down at the bottom. I was like, you okay? He goes, no. I was like, first time? He goes, yes. And I said, so how was it? I'm not answering that. Oh my gosh. And there's so much. That actually happened in front of me, though. Imagine what happens for most of our kids in private, where a kid pulls up an iPad and starts looking. And actually tends to be curiosity and disgust. And then we quickly get rid of the disgust. Especially in the dark, especially in private, especially in silence, especially when no one else knows. So we talk about it, and we go there, and we talk about it, and we go there over and over and over and over. Why? At 7, 8, 9, 10, they're their own person. As much as I've told my kids you have no free will, you are your own person. When you walk into someone else's house, when you're sitting on the gym floor here at the church, which isn't safe, nowhere is, as in someone pulls out a phone and starts looking at anything. Are you going to be the person that goes, ooh, or says, hey, boundary? We don't do that. Are you going to be the one that eggs on the joking about somebody for any reason? Or are you going to be the one to say, hey, we don't talk about people that way? This is the stage where that's planted. And this is what I literally tell parents. When your child reaches 12 or 13, your parenting is over. As in the parenting that you think of parenting. Now you start seeing the product of what you've created. And some of you hang on for dear life. But they have their own choices. And so how do we provide guardrails and boundaries for that? Yes, we do. But at 13, 14, 15, they do have that free will. And a lot of the damage that we do as Christian families at times as high schoolers is rein things in even tighter. We treat them like they're 4. I've done do a lot of work with homeschool families. It's amazing to watch in every homeschool, private school, public school, doesn't matter what you do, where you're at school, the same themes of either overprotection or the two extremes. 18, 19-year-olds never had a smartphone, which means they don't understand anything about the world and they feel isolated. Ironically, there's a lot of secular groups and secular researchers pushing, don't you dare give your phone to a kid or a teenager. And actually one called the research was the coddling of the American mind. These researchers said, I would not give my child or my teenager a smartphone unless I would trust them with a .45 pistol. And then he said, which one's more dangerous? The smartphone. Have you seen what's happened in the last few weeks with Facebook? Girls are killing themselves at a higher rate because of Instagram and Facebook. Comparison factor. We know that. We're not stupid, yet we continue to feed. And they're creating an Instagram for children. And there will be. It'll pass, it'll happen. That whole system is after you and after them. And the goal of the whole system is swipe, 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 stay, 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 stay. They want you to stay. They want you to get lost. And that's not okay. Pornography, sexual identity. Include not only their own sexual identity, but how do you talk about these friends of yours that someone who's gay, someone who's a transgender, someone who isn't like you? This is the planting of the seeds and talking about it and discussing about someone who might be in a wheelchair or someone who's overweight or someone, anything that they're going to point and kind of go, Talk. Demystify. Prior to 10. And that's my push, is this isn't something we do as they enter adolescence. In adolescence, we find out what we have. Dignity and modesty. And we could probably have a debate over this one even. I remember when we got a bag of clothes from, I think it was Kelly's sister. And in it was a sports bra, little girl sports bra. And Kelly was like, okay, Corey, what is it going to be? Because we've talked about this. And it's like, that's underclothes. And so our home, Miley knows that that's something she doesn't wear just that. That's going to be different in each of our homes. Each of us are going to have a different kind of level of comfortability and a lot of it's, again, our story. But we need to actually be intentional about teaching about this, and then teaching even our sons. Again, you're moving it out of their unconscious, where they have a unconscious, just kind of, laser beam towards sexual anything, to be stewards of that, which is so critical. Abuse and trauma. I'll start preparing my children for trauma when they get to be 14 or 15, right? Is that what we should do? My daughter actually, last night, told me, I'm going to a sleepover tomorrow. I'm like, do what? No. I hate those. I personally believe that it's a thing of the past. Because too much happens. Too much can happen. And so one of the rules we have is, first question asked, are there brothers there? No, there's only girls and the mom. It's okay. But what's happening among girls, too? Well, Katy Perry answered it for us. I kissed a girl and I liked it. Thank you. It's happening. We're experimenting. We're starting younger and younger to try things out and test things out. I had this one 14-year-old tell me one time, oh, I've been with a boy, but I haven't been with a girl yet, so I already have someone that we're going to do stuff with to see whether I'm gay or straight or bi. I don't know who I am yet. So flippantly, just, that's more the norm today than anything else. Why? Because it's what they're being told everywhere else. We need to be planting the seeds of the boundaries of some of that. The boundaries of you were made male or you were made female in God's image. What are you going to do with that? How are you going to steward that? Who are you going to be? You're beautiful, beautifully created. What is it going to look like? And I'm the guy who, I mean, everything I used to wear was purple and pink, and in college I had like five or six necklaces and bracelets, and I mean, everything about me was weird anyway. And then I'm on a mission trip, and one of the missionary wives actually said, you know what? I think I figured you out. So, you grew up in a country, I grew up in Chile, South America, and you were a white redhead and stood out like a sore thumb your whole life. Now you're in the U.S. and you don't, and you're doing everything you can to stand out. See me? Orphan? Stranger? I'm like, oh gosh, you failed me. And I started realizing that I actually choose how I present myself. We all do. Whether it's my haircut, whether it's my clothes, and that's the main ways we do it, but we decide. Actually, a lot of our gender conversations today really matter. They're really important. I don't like sports at all. Actually, I can't stand sports. That doesn't fit in our culture. I went to college in music. I played every instrument I could get my hands on. I crochet, I cross stitch. My wife won't let me do that anymore. When we first started dating, she's like, you need to stop that. I still love doing that. Like, who you are is actually uniquely beautiful, and what are you going to do to steward that? And yeah, there's probably some things we need to choose to rein in, and sometimes it's our mouth, but we need to be careful with. But we need to teach that to our children. And some of the best ways to teach that is how we talk about ourselves. If I'm saying I hate myself all the time, if I'm saying I don't like this or I don't like this about myself all the time, you can probably guess what your children are going to struggle with. My attitude is going to be influencing my children. Now 11 to 17. This is puberty, dating, genders. I mean, this is now the reality of it. This is where they're at. This is the not the precursor to when they're 18, when now they kind of have to know they're dealing with it now, and actually even younger and younger age. Average age of looking at pornography is what? You know? Like 7 or 8. And probably the research on that could go down lower now that we're giving phones to little kids too. It's the new babysitter. And these tools are amazing tools, but they're not a toy. And how do we use these well? Because there's a time and place where that iPad is a lifesaver. You know. But how can it not be the thing that they're now demanding? That right. I have a right to this. It kind of bothers me how the school system, like my dad teaches that he's a principal at a private school in Texas, and they require all 5th graders not to have a laptop. And I'm like, great, Dad. You just required every kid to have a porn portal. And you don't know what homes they come from and what stewardship and boundaries those homes have. So that terrifies me. It's also neat, some of the schools are actually saying we're getting away from iPads and technology and actually going back to paper this and paper that. It's like, ooh, what a novel idea. They've never done that before. It's crazy. But we're dealing with an epidemic when it comes to social media right now. If your kids have TikTok, they need to delete TikTok. If they have Snapchat, they need to delete Snapchat. There needs to be some boundaries around it. You can do it, you can try to control it, but there needs to be conversation as to why that helps them decide. Because at some point, and you know this, they will have to decide for themselves. And how do you steward that? You can steward it for them for a little while, but you need to be able to give them the reins slowly. So we don't start this at 17 or 18. We start this actually at 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. that we're empowering them to make certain choices on their own so they can succeed, but also so they can fail and we can go, gotcha, I gotcha. Stewardship in your child's heart. Love that word stewardship. How am I stewarding my phone or my time or my time I watch Netflix or everything? When my wife and I had our first kid, Alex, it was a Sunday, I believe. That next Friday, we went on a date. And you only have like an hour and a half between feedings or less. So we took off, and my mom had Alex, and we went and got food and came back. And we quickly learned that Thai food's not a good idea. So the next week we experimented with Mexican, and he didn't like Mexican either because of breast milk. But it was one of those things where from the beginning, because of something that had been said to me, we are the most important unit in this family. Not the kid who is desperately in need for you for survival. The marriage. I personally believe that everything ends up rising and falling around that centerpiece of the marriage. If you're not married, it's your community. It's the people you have around you that have your back, because you are never meant to do this alone. And even in the marriage, you're still not meant to do this alone. You need to be able to reach out to one another and say, hey, I need a break. I'm going to kill him. That's okay to feel that way. If you're normal, you will feel that way often. But I talk to couples all the time where it's like the husband has no clue what to do. And he's just like a puppy dog walking around. And usually just clawing at you. And it's like, no, this is a relationship that needs stewardship. And we're teaching our kids. I've got a lot of couples I work with now that they don't have any example of something good from family at all. And they're just supposed to figure it out? No. This is where we need you and I. This is where we need fellowship with someone who's been there, who's done that, who's fought that battle. And why the groups with varied age ranges is critical, actually. Some of the best small groups I've been a part of had teenagers to 70-something. It's really, really important. This is where you're diving into understanding this identity piece that's become more real than ever. I personally believe that the word attraction gets way too much press. Who you're attracted to. Because attraction is not going to take you down the long haul. Attraction gets us into a conversation. But it's actually going to be our hearts bonding and living a life together that's going to keep us for decades. Yet we talk about attraction like it's the end all. I'm attracted to this person, so I've got to go there. Well, they're married. Boundary, maybe? They're not a believer. Well, but they're real nice. They give to charity. I don't care. So what boundaries are they going to be in place, and how are they going to steward that? It's going to be really important. I'm attracted to someone who's the same sex. Great. I think Tom Cruise looks pretty good too. And as in, we need to be able to talk about things in a way that, yeah, you can think stuff and feel stuff, but it isn't who I am. It's not my identity. And then we say, well, your identity is supposed to be in Christ. Oh, what does that mean? Have to be a carpenter? No. And then how do I fill in those gaps and what that looks like? It's how I treat people. It's how I put others first. It's about service. It's about dying to myself. All these things that are the opposite of every single thing the world's telling us. How are you a great mom? Probably oftentimes when you let go. The best moms I know, actually the only good moms I know, say, I'm a crappy mom. Or I missed this, or I missed that. My sister's one of those who was always like, I'm a good mom. She was a single mom, and she's one of the worst moms I've ever seen. I'm a good mom, dang it. I was like, dude, you are a horrible mom as long as you say that I'm a good mom. Because you're defensive right now. And one day, years after her son was born, I am such a terrible mom. I was like, oh, you're right. And then she got her son taken away from her. But and he went and lived with my other sister, and he's doing amazing. He's on fire for Christ, and God is good. And what's crazy of even that is like, that kid's a mistake, right? Or actually, even scarier, we call him a bastard child. No. God didn't go, oops, one slipped through. God created him uniquely, gifted him, and he's got trauma galore, and God's going to use him. And it's beautiful. He doesn't make mistakes. How do we grow, strengthen, build up? And it's these conversations. Well, where do I start? The book you have there, homosexuality stuff, that's a tough one. How do I understand the passages? How do I understand what general human sexuality looks like? Because it's, for a lot of us, we don't even know where to start. That's what that's for, is to help you have the words, have the conversations, have a place to go, this is what God's word says. This is what I stand on. The book for the teens is the same way. It's built for them to kind of wrestle, but then the scary part for us is, and it's up to them to make those choices. It's really, really scary. Another one's the stewardship of TV shows and movies, and actually now with YouTube. And how are we losing our sons? Do you know? I mentioned girls and social media a little bit ago. How are we losing our boys? There's 3 things the research is showing that is taking our boys out.
Gaming.
Yeah, actually, video games, excessive video games, where it's I choose that over people, or some of these boys literally wear diapers and game forever and ever. I mean, it becomes horribly excessive. So video games is, yes. What else? Yes, pornography. It's everywhere. It's accessible on anything. And they're not looking at naked pictures. I actually almost wish they were. It's graphic video. From the start, not from like a few years in. Today, it's click, click, click. And I can do it on my phone. Go to Safari and click on, type in pornography, click. There's 2 choices, images and videos, and my life's never the same. It's that close on anyone's device, anywhere. And nowadays, one of the biggest kinds of pornography is actually men who have a penis, who have had breasts added. And so there's this real interesting curiosity for the very different. Type in any, please don't do this, type in any cartoon with the word porn afterwards. And there's someone who's created pornography out of that cartoon. The one I finally was introduced to because of my nephew is My Little Pony porn. And so you have these little horses, the exact same ones from My Little Pony, and they have big breasts and huge penises. Both, every one of them. This is shaping our kids in a way that we can't even comprehend of how deeply it's wounding. What we're seeing is 25-year-olds who are completely, they have erectile dysfunction. They can't have sex, they can't function. Because they have been so desensitized to a normal human ever being enough. We've got to talk about this, we've got to talk about this, we've got to go there, we've got to be uncomfortable. Influences and idols. I mean, you probably had posters in your room growing up. I think it's getting worse and worse and worse. Who do I worship? And a lot of what we can do ourselves is think about the time you spend and what you do. Who do I worship? Who do I spend my time? For some of us, it's swiping. That's my escape, is to and that's your idol. And I think Kelly was telling me, a friend of ours yesterday was saying that it was my mother-in-law's account with Kelly's brother, their little girl. The word she is now saying to get attention is, "Look at me." Why? Because we're all on our phones. We're all distracted. We're all looking elsewhere. Have you ever felt like an orphan? a stranger, a widow. You and I know this. You and I know the experience of this. Our kids are experiencing the same thing. And how can we come along and be that container that holds them and protects them and cares for them, in that safe place for them to fall, to ask questions? But again, the key of them asking questions is not necessarily them asking the questions, it's me saying, hey, let's talk about this. No, I don't want to. Well, we're going to anyway. So I wrote in the book again, Micro Conversations, it's more like mini lectures. It might come across that way, but you're planting seeds. So then when they are a teenager and they won't talk to you sometimes, you keep having those conversations because you're planting seeds of theology, planting seeds of beliefs, of protection, of skills, of tools. And you're in a relationship with them until they launch. And then it morphs again from there to a different relationship. You obviously hope it's a good one. They at least call once a year. Just kidding. And this is the cover for the new one, the new release of it. But my book was published, this red one, and the publisher closed the day it went to print. So there's mistakes in that. So I'm so sorry. That's why I'm giving them to you. Just kidding. And so I had to go through a whole months and months to finally get this one out, because so I changed the cover color of the other one. But my heart, my burden is that parents start young. Start doing this 1, 2, and 3. The truth is, 1 in 2 women have a past of sexual abuse before 18. 1 in 2. The numbers you see are 1 in 4, 1 in 5, 1 in 3 even. That's from self-report tests where they actually would say, hey, this happened to me. But how many of us have things that happen that we would never call rape or ever call that big a deal? And we're hiding. You start adding those individuals in, we're talking about a 1 in 2. Boys is a 1 in 3. This is a big deal. And yes, we can talk about all these other areas of trauma and hurt and where I feel like an orphan, widow, or stranger. The fact is we need to prepare them to face the fact that who's going to be the person that possibly tries to harm them. 9% of those that do harm are strangers. Stranger danger is not it. It's people we let in the home, it's people we trusted, it's family members, it's someone we know, it's someone we would vouch for. So prepare them to have the language, to have the ability to say no, to fight, to punch, to not be some of the things we actually don't want them doing that most of the time, but how to not be silent. And check in. When our kids were little, after every babysitter left, I asked my kids certain questions. Did they touch you? Did they do this? Did they do that? I knew they were going to be honest with me. I wasn't looking for honesty. I was looking for a change in the way they answered. Because I had stacked up years of asking this question. I'm looking for a change, a pause, shame. And then it's like the whole world stops. And some of us are even going, I wish there had been someone there for me like that. A safe place, a safe container, a holder, someone that got me, someone that saw me, someone that cared for me. Because you and I are actually in the same place of, I want to belong, I want to fit in, I want friends, I want sleep. I'm getting sleep, you're not. But I want an identity. Sometimes you're actually going, I want an identity more than just being, mom. And you're wrestling with that. My wife, she's been home for 13 years, and the first few years were tough. She's like, I think we made a mistake. It's been incredible now. We love it. And every family's got to figure out what theirs is going to look like. I actually compare my wife to a professor I work with at Corbin, who is a scientist. She's on fire for the stuff she does, and she's incredible for what she does. And I'm like, she has a burden and a passion to do things, and she's adopted 5 children. I don't know how she does all she does. She was on sabbatical one year, though, and realized, it's kind of nice being at home. Mm-hmm. But she's got this thing that my wife doesn't have. And some of you have something in you that's like, you've got to do this. Some of you don't, and that's actually beautiful too. So be careful with that comparison factor, because then if you're not careful, you're in the same place as these teenage girls with Instagram. You're comparing, and you're hurting yourself. A lot of the wives I work with right now, the moms, well, my friends put their 3-year-old in French and violin, so should I do this? And well, they're in this and this and this, and stop! Your kid doesn't need any of that stuff. Surprise, surprise, they don't need sports either. They might enjoy it, but they'll probably enjoy it only if you do. And that's usually what gets them in. They don't need it. They need you. They need relationships. They actually need to be challenged and to grow. It's actually beautiful, the calling you have in your life as a parent. And then what you do to steward that, and the stewardship of that. And how you raise them up. Knowing, right now, even as young as some of your kids might be, they've experienced those moments of shame. That I feel like I'm not being seen, orphan. Or I don't belong, stranger. Or even hurts and losses, like a widow. And think about that when they're acting up or when they're doing something that drives you crazy. And you're on that journey with them. One of the things that I don't like saying this, but it's important to say, is you're going to cause harm to your children. And I know that sounds terrible. Actually, what I used to say was, if I could just hurt them on purpose, does that help? And it doesn't. There's going to be things we miss. The best gift you can give your children is to say, I'm so sorry. Please forgive me. Can I hold it now? I missed that. Can I be that place for you now? That safe place, that container again, I love that word, being attuned to someone, which is really important. Give them that gift of being an example of, I'm not perfect. And I promise that will reap dividends. Here's another one. Got my son on the cover again. And some girl. That was a fun photo shoot because Blaze, our middle son, oh my gosh, he's nuts. The name fits. But he was constantly like going, everything that can make the girls just creeped out. It's so much fun in that. But, it's funny is this is not my gifting, writing. My wife had to edit the whole thing. Every sentence she had to undo. Because I write in passive voice and I don't even know what that means because that's what Spanish does. And so, oh my gosh, that was a trial in our marriage. Where she's changing everything. No, but I like it that way. And those are the kind of things too that as you go through stuff in your marriage and with your family, it's tests and trials that grow us. For my wife and I, we've been married 18 years, and our first almost 10 years, I was in and out of hospitals. When Miley was born, I was in bed for a year and a half. At 110 pounds, just hanging on for life. Never missed a class. I would get up, go to class, teach, and come back to bed. It was a nightmare at the time. And she's having to handle 2 toddlers, an infant, punk husband, in an old house built in 1893 with no showers. That wasn't done yet. I was restoring it. She's a saint. Some of you are going through some pretty dark times. Relationally, spiritually, sleep-wise. How do you reach out and make sure that even this, whether it's this group or someone in this group, somewhere you actually have a team? People that get you, that see you, that can hear you. Because you're giving all this energy to kids. What's building into you? And that's the model of it. Actually for life. That you're building into others and others are building into you. And how can you do that well? So thank you for having me and bless you guys. If you're interested in this one, I have them back there. Let me know, or you can get them online too. But just honored to be here and honored to serve you guys. Bless you very much.
Thank you.